You're listening to the Nonprofit State of Minds podcast, an Angel Oak creative production.
Hey everybody, David Chatham here with Angel Oak Creative. Welcome to our latest episode of Nonprofit State of Minds, the podcast where we like to pick the brains of nonprofit leaders, thought leaders who are helping to advance the nonprofit sector and to make us all better. We've had some really great guests in the past to talk about everything from um, donor relations to capital campaigns to um, crisis communications, all of those things. Today, we're going to challenge some status quo, I hope, Chantias. So we have Chantias Ford here. She is the Director of Movement Partnerships at Trust-Based Philanthropy Project. That's a mouthful. And I appreciate you being here, Chantias.
Thanks, David. I'm happy to be here with you all.
Well, we're grateful for the work that you all are doing, and I've been following Trust-Based Philanthropy Project for a long time now, and was grateful and a little flattered that you all were willing to talk to us because we admire the work that you're doing. So, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here.
Well, tell us first a little bit about yourself. What's your background? How did you come to the nonprofit sector? What kind of what's your why? If you're willing to share that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I've always been rooted and grounded in community, and in community care, from being raised in Huntsville, Alabama, and volunteering in the community center and in the library and things like that. And going off to college, I was really exploring what I wanted to do and kind of landed in the social sector research. I wanted to do the work, but I also wanted to be heady in academia and in that space. And so once I, graduated and got my degrees, I kind of landed in the research and evaluation side of the social sector.
Okay. So
And this is, of
the
course,
nerd world.
yeah, exactly. It's like the juxtaposition of like intellect and also social justice and that sort of work.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was a great intersection to start and get to look at data sets and
Oh,
evaluation and all of that heady, wonderful stuff. But yeah, and of course, this is also coupled with my background prior to, volunteering and working at nonprofits, whether it's education or, community work, that's those sorts of things. But
yeah.
yeah, I started out on the like evaluating funder initiatives.
Yeah.
Um, and then, was a consultant for funders and foundations and did a lot of work on strategic planning and designing and implementing work for funders on looking at their impact.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I've been so in the ecosphere of philanthropy. I was like, I should actually work in a foundation and see
Yeah.
what it's like kind of behind the curtain. And so I did some work in a foundation as a program officer and got to experience what it looks like to do the giving firsthand. And really enjoyed that experience. But one of the things I loved most about the work was technically not a part of my job, which
Yeah.
convening both grantees and other funders,
Sure.
convening, talking, connecting each other, and just having space to share and learn from one another, which was one of those things I was just kind of doing on the side as an extra part. But I realized I loved it so much, like, why not go do it at a philanthropy supporting organization? So
Yeah.
went over to that side and got to convene and connect and learn with funders. And that kind of landed me in my work here at Trust Based Philanthropy, where of course that's a lot of what we're doing here. So yeah, that's been my
Well, that's neat.
trajectory.
Well, Yeah, I appreciate your appreciation of data and all. I love using data. I don't like collecting and analyzing data. So,
Yeah,
thankfully we have people at Angel Oak who love to do that, and then I get to take that data and have fun with it. So I don't
yeah,
have to do the work to get to it. So,
yeah.
it takes a special brain to do that, and beyond my pay grade. So. Well,
Oh,
tell us a little bit about however you want to start, whether you want to start with kind of defining trust-based philanthropy or whether you want to talk about trust-based philanthropy project, whichever way makes most sense for you.
absolutely. Yeah. So I'll do kind of a mixture of both. Trust-based philanthropy is a phrase that's been used a lot in the social sector lately, and there may not be a full amount of clarity around what trust-based philanthropy is. So I like to
Right.
start with some of the framing around what it is. It is a funder peer-to-peer initiative. We've had nonprofits for decades now that have been saying, funders, we need you to listen to us. We need you to be more transparent. There are these pain points we have, and nonprofits have been saying this for decades, and unfortunately, the needle has not been moving in the ways it needs
Yeah.
to. And we know one of the biggest ways that funders will listen and make shifts is if they're hearing and seeing what other funders are doing. So the idea behind the project and the work is to have a space for funders to hear and to connect and to learn from one another about ways that they're doing this trust-based work. And the project actually came from, I won't give you the whole origin story, but the
Yeah.
gist of it
I love it. Yeah, keep going.
the gist of it is that the Whitman Institute was a funder that was spending down, and they were asking their grantees, what do you need from us? What do you need from us and from the sector as we're spending down, as we're preparing to leave? And the resounding report was, get more funders to operate in this way, get more funders to be relational and transparent, and to not be based in this sense of compliance and direction and order, but to be true deep partners in the work.
Yeah.
And so that's how, and the overlaying trend that kept coming up was, get funders to act like they trust us.
Mm,
Get funders to act, because
yeah.
how conventional philanthropy works, so many of the systems and structures are designed because we do not trust nonprofits,
Right.
or
Yeah.
nonprofit professionals. And so a lot of this work is to say, let's operate as if we actually trust them and have a trusting, true partnership, and not just this relationship that's based on compliance and dictating and this power dynamic.
Yeah.
So that's a little of the origin story and what trust-based philanthropy is. Of course, like I said, it's that funder peer-to-peer initiative, but it's also this movement. It's this movement that's happening in the social sector where more and more funders are aligned with this work and committed to doing it and to shifting some of these conventional ways of operating in the philanthropic sector and trying to shift to a more relational approach.
Yeah.
And it's also a framework. It's a framework with 4 components and 6 practices, and a depth of research and insights and examples that are helping funders to actually shift things to this way.
Can you help us understand, maybe help me understand, how did we get here? How did we get to a place where we didn't trust nonprofits, right? I mean, what does that look like? Yeah,
Yeah.
help us understand that a little bit.
Oh my goodness. It's gone back, and the Council for Nonprofits Practice, I want to say, has some research on the nonprofit perception,
Hmm.
which is really interesting if you again want to dig
Yeah,
into some of that data there. It's really interesting to think about how it was perceived, but I think in terms of the relationship between funders and nonprofits. We have to be honest. So much of the wealth was amassed from inequitable ways,
right.
ways that have further marginalized those that are most marginalized, that have, and those that are holding the wealth oftentimes are not coming from those identities with that are marginalized or that have those lived perspectives. Um,
Sure.
And as we know in our society and of course in our sector, unfortunately, those that have the money have the power. Um,
Yeah.
and so all of these different dynamics at play have been kind of what has produced this power dynamic and this operating as if there is a lack of trust there. And
Yeah.
a lot of it is really saying, we hold the money, we know what's best, and we're going to give those directions. And one of the questions we get a lot of times from funders is if we're pulling all of our control and power, then how can we ensure that they're going to do what they say they're going to do? How can we hold our grantees accountable? How can
Called
we?
trust, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the question that, I like to ask back is, what makes you assume that they need you to
Right.
manage it? Like
Right.
if we as funders don't show up, the nonprofits are still going to do the work. Like,
Yeah.
one, because they're passionate about it, because they care, because they're grounded, because they're rooted. Like, most times you're going into nonprofit work because you care. It's not
Yeah.
because you want to get a big payout. Like, let's be
Right.
honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there are so many things that play on how the dynamics started to happen.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of what we're trying to push past.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
is resonating with funders when it comes to um, helping to reset their philosophy, their thinking around philanthropy? What tends to be the motivating factor for them, to help them to move past that old status quo and move into a more trust-based framework?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a few things. One is seeing and hearing that this is what the field is doing.
Right.
This is the best practice in the field now. If you look at any of the philanthropic organizations, the philanthropic infrastructure organizations, if you look at their programs, if you look at their conferences, people are talking about equity. People are talking
Right.
about how to be a more equitable grant maker, how to be more relational, how to have more transparency. Like, this is I don't want to say a trend, but it's a movement that's happening
Sure.
across the sector in a lot of different ways.
Right.
And so that adds the pressure of saying this is how we're moving as a sector. So
Yeah.
that's one of the big things that we're seeing and hearing. And then also there's a lot more professionals that are coming into the sector that have lived experience, that have the DEI background and priorities. And, so with more and more folks that are advocating for it and that have those backgrounds, you'll also see more of those shifts happening. And then, of course, initiatives like the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project, there are
Yeah.
other partner orgs that are doing similar work, that are really helping to lift up that this is the direction we're going in. And of course, hearing from other funders that are doing it, being able to
Right.
say, let's step back and question why we're doing things the way we're doing them and realize that there's a better way. And this isn't just some, kumbaya, we're going to hold hands and feel good sort of thing, but this is strategic and it gets
Right.
us to greater and stronger impact if we're operating in this way. So all of
Talk
those
about
things are
that a
really,
little bit, Chantias. How does trust-based philanthropy result in a greater impact? What does that look like?
oh,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that's a compelling, narrative, right? A compelling motivating factor for people to say, okay, if it means that my money's going to make a bigger impact, maybe this is something to consider, right?
Yes. I don't know if you could tell, but the valuation nerd in me got excited to talk about impact.
You got it moving. So,
Yeah, oh
well,
yeah, I
good.
could talk about this all day.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it.
But yeah, it's really interesting to talk about impact and what it means with trust-based philanthropy. And that's been a big part of what's also pulled people along is understanding that this is a strategic shift that's going to lead to greater impact. And one of the things we talk about a lot is with the status quo philanthropic relationship, the relationship between funders and nonprofits and conventional philanthropy.
Yeah,
Nonprofits are saying what they know funders want to hear.
right,
Nonprofits are like, I want to serve you. I know you want me to serve 100 students. So I'm going to tell you, that's what I'm doing. That's my goal. Like,
right.
like it's very transactional. It's very
Yeah,
I need to say what they want me to hear. But with trust-based philanthropy, it's I'm coming in as a true partner. I'm helping you. I'm learning the true barriers and accelerators to impact to the goals you want to make. I'm really stepping in as a true partner. So we're
Yeah.
getting past this whole like, what do you want me to hear? And more towards what is really happening. Nonprofits are feeling more confident and comfortable in sharing the struggles, sharing
Yeah.
the issues, and funders are feeling more empowered to really support them in that process. So you're getting greater insights, you're getting greater impact through that
Yeah.
relationship. Also having nonprofit voice and perspective in the strategy and the design of how funders are operating is
Yeah.
also allowing stronger impact to happen. And of course, when we're having unrestricted multi-year funding, nonprofits are, which is a component of the framework,
Right.
nonprofits are able to plan ahead, they're able to dream bigger, they're able to get to stronger impact. So all of these different components are really leading to a stronger, not just the relationship, but when you look at the impact, both in how we're even defining
Yeah.
impact, how we're defining success, because it's not funder driven, it's collaboratively driven. Um,
Right.
but both in how we're defining it, how we're measuring it, how we're evaluating it, and then what it actually is. They're it's stronger all around operating in this way.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned unrestricted funding as kind of part of, maybe one of the pillars or one of the points of
Mhm.
trust-based philanthropy. Can you kind of go over those four
Yeah,
pillars, or
yeah.
just help us to understand what the foundation of it is?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I like to, and if I had slides, I could show you, but check out our website. There are plenty of
Yep.
resources. You can find all of this on the first tab. There's a what is TBP, and you
Okay.
can really dig into it. But in the framework, there's four dimensions. There's culture, which is, of course, your organization's way of being, what your organization looks like internally, of course. The structures, which are, the systems, the protocols, the hiring practices, the grants management systems, the technology. There's the leadership side of things, of course,
Hmm.
which is, I mean, I don't have to explain leadership. And then there
No,
are
you're
the
good. Yeah.
actual practice the actual practices, which is what you do and how you show up as a grant maker. And we
Yeah.
really encourage this holistic embodiment of what it means to be trust-based across all of those. Like a lot of times
Yeah.
people just go straight to the practices, and
Right.
I'll jump to the practices in just a moment. A lot of times people go straight to the practices, but we really encourage a holistic adoption of trust-based philanthropy. And a lot of times what happens is if you're just focused on the practices and not holistically, of course, that internal side isn't matching up and it can't provide the foundation that you need to do the
Right.
work externally.
Yeah.
And of course, we encourage values alignment. There are some values that we talk about for trust-based funders to align on, but then also we encourage there's this practice to values gap in the sector where funders
Yeah.
say, "Oh, my values are X, Y, and Z," but nonprofits aren't experiencing those at all.
Wow.
So we also encourage funders to look at what your values are and how you can make sure they're embedded across all of those dimensions, not just oh, this one program officer needs to hold this thing, but across your hiring practices, across your systems, across your grants management, your CRMs, all these things, across your leadership, your culture. So
Right.
that's the holistic
Yeah.
model.
Oh,
Um,
that's great. Okay.
yeah. And then the six practices, there are six practices that I like to lift up.
Sure.
There's the giving multi-year unrestricted funding, as I mentioned.
Amen.
Yes, doing the homework, which is,
Yep.
of course, funders being proactive about doing the research about grantees rather than waiting for them to come to them.
Yep.
Understanding some of those power dynamics and some of the limited resources that nonprofits have. Simplifying and streamlining paperwork is a big one.
Yes, please.
We know there are so many things that funders are asking for and collecting that they're not using. And the research shows we significantly underestimate how much time it takes nonprofits to complete the requirements of these applications, of these awards, all these different things. We significantly underestimate how much time.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting. A lot of things that a lot of
Which
times
is one thing nonprofits don't have much of, right? Is capacity, right? I mean, they're
exactly.
already, yeah. I mean, it's
Exactly,
so frustrating.
exactly. And fun, like so much of this work is just empathy. It's like take the time to do your own application and see how long
Right.
it takes,
Yeah,
like have some empathy for what you're asking others to
that's
do.
right.
Another practice is to be transparent and responsive.
Yeah,
We know there's this iron wall when it comes to philanthropy, and it's hard to know what's happening, and nobody's communicating, and it's hard to reach out to anybody. And so this is really just saying, if you want to be in relationship, be in relationship,
right.
take the time and prioritize that. And then soliciting and acting on feedback is an important one.
Yeah,
Which we lift up. Make sure you have the mechanisms, make sure they're not tied to an award. A lot of times nonprofits don't want to give feedback because they're scared it might affect their funding.
yeah,
Again, going back to what we were saying about how nonprofits are going to say what they think funders want to hear.
that's right.
Um, and then the last practice that we like to lift up is offering support beyond the check. So really being a true partner,
Mm,
don't just write a check and walk away, but lean in, being responsive. We've seen funders do things like wellness grants or
yeah,
retreats or just different opportunities, connecting nonprofits with other funders, connecting nonprofits with other nonprofits that are doing similar work. There's so
yeah,
many different ways that you can show up as a true and trusted partner beyond the check. That can be a sticky area, and we like to encourage funders to make sure they're not being extractive. Um,
right.
and that they're not, because sometimes it can be burdensome. So this is
Yeah,
part of the like having the relationship. We've seen funders who, oh, I'm going to offer all these things to my grantees, and you have to do this and you have to do that, and it's like you mean well, but this is burdensome
yeah.
to.
It's really defeating the purpose, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Very
So
counterproductive, I guess. So, well,
yeah.
get can you share maybe an example, whether you want to share a name or not is fine, but can you share an example of maybe where you've seen this be successful of a funder who's successfully moved into this trust-based philanthropy mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many different funders that we like to lift up in the work that they're doing. One that came to mind, especially because we've been talking about impact and evaluation and things like that,
Yeah.
is the Headwaters Foundation. Um,
Okay.
Brenda Solorzano was the CEO there and did a lot of work, especially around shifting the learning and evaluation side of things with that work. And of course, things like the practices and the culture work. She came in and really was able to shift a lot of that work. And now, excitingly enough, she's at the California Endowment. So she's made that shift. But a lot of these practices and things, especially around really reframing how we're looking at evaluation and impact. One of the things that she really championed was this three-pronged approach to evaluation. One, acknowledging that social change is long-term and complex,
Right.
and a
Yeah.
lot of the like evaluation questions that we ask in conventional philanthropy are they don't really help us move the needle towards social change. Let's
Right.
let's be honest. Your $10,000 grant for a year is not going to help us eradicate homelessness,
Right.
So really shifting some of the thinking about evaluation and looking at long-term social change, but then also looking at learning for accountability. Like how are
Right.
we as a funder being accountable to what we said we were going to do and how we said we were going to partner with these organizations. So having that be a part of the evaluation component. Um, and yeah. So I mean, I won't dig too much into that, but there are so many different examples of ways that funders have really stepped up and made some of these shifts happen. Um, and that funders are doing it especially now with this
Yeah.
with this time that we're in. We've really tried to shift to this meeting the moment sort of practice, where we're
Yeah.
really trying to lift up that, especially now, nonprofits are really struggling. There are a lot of things happening on the ground, and funders have to step up. And so we have this. I hope you don't mind me shifting a little bit.
No, please go ahead. Yeah.
So I definitely wanted to make sure we had time to talk about the call to action.
Yep.
'Cause it's really important for folks to understand that this is how we're talking about what it means to be trust-based during this time, and
Yeah.
acknowledging that there are a lot of different pain points and struggles that nonprofits are facing, especially with this time that we're in. And so there's three parts to this call to action that we've lifted up. There's the move in solidarity with nonprofits, which gets at a lot of the things I was just talking about with the relational pieces, with practice. There's the mobilized money, which again, we talk about the multi-year unrestricted funding.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, nonprofits need that support.
Yeah.
So we're encouraging funders to do that, and even doing things such as increasing their grant making budget, giving gifts instead of grants, being flexible on grant disbursements, like all of those things around how you can use your money and resources to really support nonprofits during this time.
Yeah.
We acknowledge that, of course, with all of the funding gaps that are happening, private philanthropy cannot fill all of the gaps, but there are still plenty of things that funders can do to be
Yeah.
responsible.
And I mean, I don't mean to be contrary, but I think private philanthropy could fill those gaps. There's, I mean, there's enough money out there to, and if they can't fill it fully, it sure could make a big dent, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so I don't want to let them off the hook, right? I mean,
I
I don't want
love
to
it.
blame them for anything, but I don't want to let them off the hook because I do think that there's another level to me, another level of urgency, another level of responsibility that we need to encourage funders to think about right now. And,
Yeah.
again, I'm grateful for everything, right? But, and also,
Yes.
what, how can they meet the moment, right? How can they step up? And, I think yeah, it's interesting what, to look at the US alone, the amount of wealth that is here, right? And how do we use that to move social justice, to move social, kind of empowerment causes forward. I think, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels very unorganized and very haphazard to me in many ways. And maybe I just don't see the big picture, but it does feel like it's just not an organized group, right? It's, kind of everybody doing their thing. And to me, when you talk about a movement like what you all are trying to do, it's getting people moving in the same direction, right? It's getting them to move forward with the same values and the same philosophy. Maybe they don't have the same priorities, but at least they're moving forward in a way that is strategic and planned and not just, you know, chasing the shiny object, right? So I don't know if that makes any sense, but it just kind of what came to my mind was, I think there is so much wealth out there and so much money. And if it can be unleashed in a way that doesn't require so much capacity consumption, that the impact is just, to me, exponentially greater, right? So,
Absolutely.
uh,
Yeah.
sorry,
I
I kind of got on my own soapbox there.
No, no, I love it. And I completely agree. Sometimes I like to call myself a radical optimist.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I feel like, I'm very optimistic about what the future can look like if
yeah,
we're aligning on these things. And you hit the nail on the head. It's about convening and connecting us so that we can all be moving in the same direction. That's why we, say this is movement
yeah,
work. We're moving from, some of the bad, or I don't want to say bad, but
mm,
I mean, some of the harmful practices of
right.
conventional philanthropy. So
Well, so how can people get involved? What are some concrete steps that they can take, whether they're funders, whether they're professionals, whether they're, working day to day in the nonprofit sector? What are some ways that we can help this movement move faster?
yeah, absolutely. Before I answer that, I do want to
Sure.
give the third point to
No,
the
I'm sorry. Yeah, please. No, my
uh
bad.
we got on a little bit of a tangent, but
I'm
it was
sorry. Yeah,
good. It was a good point.
I'm sorry.
No, 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 you're fine. You're fine. The third one I just want to make sure people understand is around nurturing possibility and innovation,
Mm,
which is
yeah,
really acknowledging that these are unprecedented times. I know we say that all the time.
yeah,
But people are, especially nonprofit professionals are leaning in and really reimagining their work in really
yeah,
innovative ways. And funders should not only get out of their way, because a lot of times we stand in the way of the innovation and the flexibility. Um,
yeah,
but not only should we get out of their way, but we should also be funding and supporting this innovation and thinking of new ways of working and operating. Um, funding big bets. We've seen and heard of a funder who said, I'm giving a 10-year grant and
yeah,
letting you all plan big and plan ahead and do what you have to do. We have funders that are exploring alternative models of giving, funding 501c4s, fiscally
yeah,
sponsored, all sorts of different ways to really lean outside of what's conventional because nonprofits are having to do that. Nonprofits
yeah,
are having to shift their ways of working every day, like with all of
yeah.
the changes that are
It,
happening.
and Shantias, doesn't it mean too that there has to be some tolerance for risk in
Absolutely.
right? I mean, doesn't it mean that maybe there's a possibility of failure, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't continue to be funded or they shouldn't continue to be
Yeah.
supportive. It just means that that particular effort may not have worked for whatever reason, whether it was timing, the way that the world was, at that particular circumstance, whatever it was, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
it was just a bad idea that seemed really good at the time and it was worth a try, right?
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's another frustrating point for me is, all the risk seems to be in the private sector, but when the risk wants to be taken in the nonprofit sector, people get pretty bunged up about it.
Yes. Absolutely, unfortunately. And we actually have been having a lot of conversations in the sector around reframing risk and
Yeah,
shifting that from, oh, this was a failure to this was a learned lesson.
amen.
Which is again a part of that like evaluation impact conversation is we're learning here. Like, let's be
Yeah,
honest. And internally, when a foundation says, oh, we're gonna go in this direction, and then they learn it's not the direction they want to go into and they pivot, it's like, oh, we're doing a new strategic plan. We're learning and but nonprofits don't have that same grace. Like,
right.
come on. So
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
Yeah.
the conversations are happening. I'm seeing more of that. We're thinking about what risk looks like, what risk folks are tolerant towards. And also funders are stepping in and supporting nonprofits with some of the risks and things that they're facing. We've
Yeah.
heard funders are saying, okay, we'll give you legal support. We'll give you,
Mhm.
security support, like
Right.
specific things that funders are really leaning in to do to support nonprofits when they're seeing, oh, this may be an area of risk for you, or this may be an area where you may be at risk for targeting. So
Right.
yeah, it's happening, but we need more of it. Definitely.
Well, and it's interesting because I think more and more, I think historically we've quashed that um, innovative, risk-taking side of the sector, right? So I think it's going to take time to build that up and,
Yeah.
and the funds to do it and the willingness to do it. So I do hope that this maybe is another way that funders and nonprofits even will, because I think nonprofits are afraid to think big, right? Often. And I
Yeah.
don't want to blame them. Nobody's blaming them, right? But I do want to encourage them to, think big. What is that big, audacious goal that you can say, what? Or that really out of the box idea. And, find that funder that says, what? Let's give this a try. Hey, it may not result in the exact results we want, but I'm guarantee you we're going to learn something, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so,
And when we shift the goalposts from I'm making this expectation of what this is going to be to the goal is for us to learn.
right.
Then, we're shifting what success is, and we're
Yeah.
shifting, and it gives nonprofits the opportunity to dream big and to think ahead and without the scarcity mindset or without the fear. So it'll be really transformative for the entire sector if we can make those shifts happen.
Chantias, do you hear some people say, well, if I, part of the challenge with trust-based philanthropy is, and again, this is my just, kind of thinking out loud here, but my guess is that there's people who say, yeah, but what about accountability?
Oh yeah.
Right. So
Oh
how do you address that well they're not held accountable because we're trusting them or whatever, right? I mean, it's kind of a
yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
it's yeah. Anyway, talk about
Yeah.
it a minute. How do
Yeah.
people get past that?
That's one of our biggest questions we get, and one of our biggest misperceptions around trust-based philanthropy is, oh, I can't do that because I want to hold my grantees accountable.
Right.
Um, we're not advocating for a lack of accountability. With any relationship you have,
Right.
there should be accountability. It's just we're advocating for mutual accountability.
There
Just as
you
much as you're holding your nonprofits accountable, they should be holding you accountable.
Yep.
And a lot of the harm that we've seen in the sector has been because funders are not being held accountable. They don't have
Mhm.
mechanisms to hold them accountable. And so funders can come in and say they're going to do something and then pull out, or
Yeah.
funders can really shift some strategic directions and have nonprofits going in a way that's not advantageous for their community. And so one of the things we say a lot is, as funders, this should be a mutually beneficial relationship, a mutually accountable relationship. So we
Yeah.
say that. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, when funders ask, how am I going to hold my nonprofits accountable? A lot of
Yeah.
what we also try to do is push back on the notion that that's our role. As
Yeah.
funders, is it our role to hold nonprofits accountable? Like what gave us the the crown
Yeah.
to say this is what we should be dictating? No, as funders, our role is to be supportive partners and to invest. This is a mutual relationship. As funders, we have money we have to give out. We
Yeah.
have impact we're trying to see, and nonprofits are doing it. They're doing the work, and that's part of the do the homework part we talk about. Is
Yeah.
if you as a funder are doing the research and you know this nonprofit is doing amazing work, they're making the impacts, they're doing the things, you don't need to hold them accountable because they're doing the work. Trust that they're doing it because you did the research.
Right.
Like we're not just saying just like cover your eyes
Blind
and like
blind
point to,
trust, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it's like do the work to understand the field, the landscape, understand who are the key players and movers, or if it's not the key players and movers, because we also encourage folks to fund the grassroots led, the smaller orgs, the ones that are
Right.
up and coming.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be the big, and it shouldn't just be the big players.
Right.
But the point is, if funders are doing the research, then you show up, you make your decisions, and you show up in true partnership. Nonprofits shouldn't have to continuously but be auditioning for the role,
Yeah.
like
That's right.
so yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, as we wrap up here, let's talk about how people can get involved. What steps can they take to get to become part of the movement?
Absolutely. So there's so many different ways, but I would say the one big way is, of course, to be a signatory on the call to action, the Meet the Moment call to action. So if you go to our website, trustbasedphilanthropy.org, then a slash meet the moment, meet dash the dash moment.
Yeah.
Of course, if you go to our website and you go under what is TBP, you'll see sign the commitment as one of the drop down options. So you can really see those examples. You can also see all of the signatories. There's so many that have really signed up to be a part of this work. We're convening signatories. We're having regional meetings. We're having ways to connect and mobilize folks. Folks are
When
aligning
when are
on
you
so
coming
many.
to North Carolina, Shantice? I want to hear.
Well, I'm already in North Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm based in Charlotte.
When's the next convening? Are we going to be able to?
Yeah, so we actually have some things up and coming. We don't have a specific date yet, but there is a
Okay.
lot of energy happening in North Carolina. So
Good.
once we get a good amount of signatories on the map, we definitely can do some regional options here, especially since I'm local. Would love
Yeah.
to do that. Um, but yeah, if you go in and sign, there's also an option for endorsers. So these are non-funders. So we've had nonprofits, we have philanthropics, infrastructure organizations. These are folks that are just saying, yes, I agree with this. I agree this is the direction philanthropy should move, and I want to be a part of this movement in whatever way that I can. And I also would just make a quick note that some people may have a fear about signing because they say, oh, I can't do all these things. I can't commit to increasing my grant making budget, or
Right.
I can't commit to some of these things. The idea behind this isn't necessarily perfection. We
Right. It's the
understand that.
spirit of it, right?
You said what?
It's the spirit of it, right? It's that,
Exactly.
I mean, yeah,
Exactly. It's the spirit of it's committing to this direction. It's
right.
committing to saying, I want to be a part of this movement where we are collectively going in this direction. And this is the way we feel the sector should be going together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely encourage you
I
to
mean, what's the alternative, Chantias, right? Do we go backwards? I mean,
yeah.
I
Or
mean,
we keep grasping at straws until,
right.
our whole sector is demolished,
I know.
you
Well,
know,
I
so
encourage folks to check it out. I think you have 20 something thousand followers on LinkedIn, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
obviously there's something happening there. So people make sure you follow on social as well. They put out some really great content. I'm a consumer of that. And sharer of that. So encourage people to check that out. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, Shantias, is that okay? Can they reach out to
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah,
How can they reach out? How can they connect with you?
definitely. So on our website, you can see, I don't think my email is on here. But my email is just shantias@trustbasedphilanthropy.org.
Okay.
You can also find me on LinkedIn, Chantias Ford, or our hello at
And
trustbasedphilanthropy.org email.
they respond. I reached out, lowly David Chatham at Angel Oak Creative, and that you responded, and I was really impressed. And
And here we are.
I know. Look at us now.
Yeah.
So thank you, Shantias, for all your time. Thank you for Trust-Based Philanthropy Project and the work that you all are doing to change our sector for the better. And we're grateful for that. Thank everybody for listening today. Obviously, if you found this podcast, you know where we are, but love to have you listen to some other episodes that we've done in the past and share with others. Give us a review. We'd love to have a review of how you liked our. If you liked us, if you didn't, maybe keep it to yourself. But we're grateful for everybody and look forward to staying in touch, Shantias, and maybe seeing you one day here in person.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David, and
All
the
right.
Angel Creative.
Well, you have a great day.
You too.